I still think the best character in Castlevania was Dracula. I still think they nailed it perfectly with that. Like, that was the best they got, you know? Like, don't get me wrong, I like all the show, but there's something about the way they handle him. I think the main thing... Don't know, I like the rest of it. I'm not saying I don't. I like it a lot, actually. I just really like the first season. You know what I like the most about it, though? I like the most... the thing that I liked the most about it was the fact that they were unashamed with their portrayal of Dracula. They were like, the people in the room at the design meeting were like, hey, do you think it'd be too stereotypical to literally just make Dracula like the most Dracula? Like everything? Like just make everything about him fully Dracula? And they were like, no, actually, that's exactly what we're going for. And then they did it. We don't want less Dracula, okay? We want more Dracula. We want him to be the most brooding, most Dracula vampirist vampire there is. And that's it. We don't want anything different. So they did it, and it's really good, you know? I love him so much. I love my broody boy. I love him so fucking much, dude. I feel like the thing that really made Dracula cool with his brooding in the first season was the fact that they didn't try to make it look not pathetic. Does that make any sense? Like, he's a broken man, his wife is dead, and like he looks really cool up there, but it's obvious that he's having a pathetic sulk, and they don't like try to take away from that. They're aware of the fact that he's like an ancient immortal being that's sulking on top of a throne, and like he sounds whiny whenever he talks to people, and they just roll with it, and I appreciate that. They didn't try to like lie to the audience and go like, actually it's super cool and badass and edgy the way he's acting like a 14-year-old, you know. Yeah, I like that. I really appreciated that. Have you seen Hunter x Hunter? Yeah.
Up yours,
This Dracula? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We'll see who
I do admit I've also have a deep fondness for vampires as a fantasy creature. But I really like original vampires, you know? I don't like all of the new vampires because I think there's still so much you can do with the old vampires, you know? Because they live forever and go insane? No, because like nowadays there are a lot of like new vampire interpretations, like the Vampire Diaries, Twilight is a big one, like the Anne Rice series or whatever, where vampires are like basically like they're part of like a cool secret society, right? Like that's a lot of it. That's like a big part of the modern interpretation of a vampire, you know? Okay, yeah, Morbius, yeah, but what about Into the Shadows? Well, Into the Shadows is great, don't get me wrong. But it's still, they're still like cool, comedy cool, with a secret society, right? Did you watch Buffy? I've seen some stuff from Buffy, but I haven't like really watched the show. Are you guys following me? Because I'm trying to make a point here, right? The original point, as I understand it, the origin of vampires in like the public imagination was a way of capitalizing upon the fear and the power of the old aristocracy. So post-industrial revolution, you know, the aristocracy is no longer the major force in the world. Now it's the industrialist. The really powerful people are the people who are capable of like facilitating the creation of the modern economy. So it wasn't just rich people. The vampires were like the old aristocrats, like ancient mansions built centuries ago in like, you know, decaying backwaters of old feudal properties. And that's why vampires followed like a bunch of old rules. You can't enter houses without being invited, like stuff like that, because it was meant to be kind of like a hyped up horror version of how the aristocrats had their own like code of nobility, you know? Like the old aristocracy had their like weird old money kind of thing. The point of vampires wasn't that they weren't meant to be like rulers of the world. The point is that they're the old power. They're falling out. maybe they used to have like big empires of enslaved humans or whatever, but now they're sitting in these like castles that are falling apart, just sort of withering, you know. So obviously when it comes to something as like universal as vampires, we're talking about there have been like a million interpretations, but the themes that I'm describing right now I really like. Vampires that are ancient, brooding because they have aristocratic virtues, you know, easily slighted, confused by the modern world. I like that too. Like a vampire should be confused by the way things are now, you know? And the reason they're bloodsuckers, as I understand it, is because that's what people thought of the old aristocracy, you know? The old aristocracy were the wealthy who did nothing for their wealth. They were parasites of the serfdom. Whereas at that time, modern robber barons and industrial leaders, of course, as socialists, we think of them the same way, but they were at least productive forces. Um, oh, dude. Actually, the idea of vampire reimagined as like a Gilded Age robber baron that would actually be really cool. Like a vampire that instead of it being like a decaying um Victorian mansion, it would be like a Detroit like old factory, like when the automotive industry fell out. Like it would be some like ancient like oil baron or like coal factory, like something like that. And it would be like the tropes of vampirism kind of transcribed onto, you know, the aesthetics and the that could actually be really cool though. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, yeah, that could actually be really, really cool. You know, but you would have to update the vampire aesthetic, um, because this doesn't work if you're trying to make a horror villain out of like a Gilded Age robber baron. You know, they wouldn't look like this. They wouldn't act or talk like this. They wouldn't have all those old rules and expectations. They would have like there would be something that's meant to be representative of all the harm and decay associated with those types of rulers. You'd have to be careful not to fall into the anti-Semitic side of vampire tropes when you go about modernizing them. I personally, in my personal opinion, I feel like dodging the anti-Semitism shit with vampire tropes is really easy. In my opinion, I feel like you have to try pretty hard to be thinking of Jews when it comes to like vampire mythology in general. Like I know it got woven in sometimes, but I feel like you have to ascribe that pretty hard. You know what I mean? Um, One of the main things that like doesn't translate is that vampires are never bankers, ever. The direct handling of money is not something a vampire would ever care about because vampires are primarily concerned with status. So all the old tropes against Jews don't really overlap with like you can if you want, right? But like I don't think it's like an immediate natural um transference of stereotype. Yeah, well, of course, if you had like a robber baron vampire, they would love money. So I guess you would have to figure out how to think of that responsibly. Yeah, like obviously any like oil baron, like Rockefeller style vampire would of course be obsessed with wealth because, I mean, yeah, right. So I would have to think of that. I would have to, yeah, I would have to think of it. Yeah. I didn't know about anti-Semitism, but I thought it was homosexuality undertones with people like Crimea and OG Dracula. Well, a lot of it is kind of like a faffy thing. See, stories and tropes about the old aristocracy being homosexual aren't really new. They predate vampires. The idea in the minds of a lot of common people was that the serfs, the serfdom, were God-fearing, hard-working, honest people who followed God's laws. And then a lot of aristocrats were like these decadent, you know, like they would like pour wine on each other and drink the wine, you know, like the way people would paint like Romans during the fall of the empire, right? That was like a smear often thought against the old aristocracy. Because keep in mind, a lot of aristocrats, well, almost all of them, weren't a part of the royal bloodline, you know? Like obviously the peasants wouldn't go about like screaming from the top of their lungs, yeah, my local lord is actually like a sodomite or whatever, because they might get a little bit beheaded for that. But a lot of the aristocrats were appointed back then. I mean, it would be like a general would do well in a war, and they would be given like landed property, stuff like that. So the aristocracy could be made up of lots of people, and oftentimes the peasantry didn't like them, and they would wear the frilly collars, and the peasants would have two linen shirts, and the aristocrats would have these fancy threads they got in France or Italy or something, and it leads into like arguments against decadency and stuff like that. Is there no distinction between a capitalist caricature and a Jewish caricature? I feel like you need more than greedy rich person for it to be anti-Semitic. Oh no, I agree. I agree completely. I actually think the big distinction between an anti-Semitic like vampire trope and like a robber villain Rockefeller type vampire trope would actually, believe it or not, be posture. Um, in virtually all anti-Semitic depictions, the Jew is hunched forward greedily. But in almost all depictions at the time of the robber barons, they had their chests thrust forward and their hands posed confidently. The robber baron does not touch money themselves. That's the job for the legions and legions of people beneath them who operate their industries. The robber baron, again, in the propaganda mind, the robber baron is an architect of the future, a visionary. They're the person who goes to the World's Fair and shows off their new refrigerator model. They're the person who builds the cars, the assembly lines, these it's an endorsement of Elon Musk is the modern example. The tropes are associated with an endorsement of the perceived ingenuity, bravery, and worksmanship of these guys. None of this applies to anti-Semitic stereotypes where they're always portrayed as greedy, conniving, that kind of stuff. You get what I'm talking about, right? I don't recall Quoteth, I'm afraid. What about an old oil tycoon vampire clinging on to a dying oil industry as it destroys the earth? The key thing, the industry has to be like decaying properly. For me, the big ones would be Western automotive industries. That's a big one. Like they hollowed out the Rust Belt, That's a big one. Coal mines, like a lot of stuff having to do with coal. Though we still use coal all the time, the way we use it has changed tremendously. And another big one, honest to God, somebody in chat said this earlier, and big shout out. The idea of shopping mall vampire can be done in a very cringe way, or can be done in a very cool way. Um, because I think like 99 times out of 100, that's going to be like really cringy social commentary. But I think if done properly, it could actually be really, really, really good. Think of it as kind of like an urban legend myth tale. Imagine you have a mall that used to be like the center of a community that dies because malls are dying right now, and the death of that mall spreads like a curse, So now adjacent properties start going out of business, shuttering their doors and windows and what have you. And, the rumors are some figure stalks the place, and it's like this expanding range of the death of like 1980s consumerism. What would that look like? What is 1980s consumerism? It's not neon clothing, okay? That's the yoga stuff. We're talking are we talking like Patrick Bateman? I think we're talking Patrick Bateman. We're talking Patrick Bateman with a phone the size of a book and a lot of cocaine. I think we are. Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a guy in like a really like clean gray suit who does a fuckload of cocaine. Yeah, 1980s materialism is dying. It is. People use the internet now. That could be really cool. Yeah, Wolf of Wall Street type shit, but consumerism, not just stock market stuff. Stock market's still going strong. Vampire newspaper tycoon. Ooh, you're right. Print is also dying. Ah, shit. Yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that I just like the vampire archetype, You know what I mean? I just like, but literally as a vampire. Like, sure, drink blood, but I like the archetype. I hate the zombie story. Any story that involves a bunch of people turning into zombies, deeply reactionary, in a psychosocial sense, the fear of zombies is the fear of the public, not of the elite, In the zombie apocalypse, the zombies are the manifest antagonism, a fear of people at large, of population spaces, of the proletarian, In the end of the zombie apocalypse, the survivors wander the ruins of city streets occupied only by shambling masses. And what are they but the proletarian you were smarter than? I believe this. I do. I do believe on a fundamental level there's something almost a Protestant work ethic-ish about the vampire... Sorry, not the vampire, the zombie story. You have... Because the end state of the zombie story is one in which a small group of, how would you put it, exceptional individuals who manage to avoid the zombies, unlike the rest, wander and try to make ends meet in spite of the remainders. Now, that's not to say that all zombie stories are bad. I've loved plenty of zombie games, stories, whatever. I just think that on a fundamental level, there's something... This is crackpot media analysis. Good. If you disagree, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I'm only sharing my opinion here. No. I'm only sharing my opinion. This is just, it's a feeling, horror stories are meant to play upon fundamental discomforts that we hold. And I feel like they come from different places sometimes. It's not like a direct one-to-one thing. It's just a vibe, One of the reasons I like the vampire stories is that they are only ever manifest of hatred and disgust and fear towards the elite. That's always the case. The vampire is always of the elite. Well, actually, there are modern interpretations where that's not the case, and it's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of, Vampire Diaries and so on, because it's like, okay, well, now vampires are everywhere, right? But no, the vampire is not just a person afflicted by the blood drinking curse. They are the decay of the aristocracy. They are the decay of the old institution. I like that personally. But this is my preference. I'm picking. This is my preference. Maybe somewhat Strahd Cumsock, but I feel like after the modern sexual liberation movement, it's much easier to look past the vampiric associations with sexual degeneracy. After all, again, Dracula is the most Dracula in Castlevania, and I don't think anything in his portrayal is meant to evoke a kind of disgust at effete, foppish, homosexual deviancy. I think that can be worked around, personally. Are werewolves the proletariat? I have no fucking idea what werewolves are, I'm sorry. Italians? Very hairy. Would you rather tap a werewolf or a vampire? Okay. I feel like my answer on this changes really frequently. There are benefits to both. Okay? So first of all, as we all know, all white women want to be gangbanged by 13 werewolves in daylight in a public park. Clearly there's some, some wisdom, some notion there. However, vampires have to be good at sex, right? That's like a part of the thing. Like, all vampires have to be bisexual, and all vampires have to be good at sex. If they're not, I don't know what we're talking about. I don't know what we're talking about. In my mind, when I think of vampire, old castle, I imagine them maybe with other vampires, lesser thralls, humans that they have in a harem or whatever. I imagine they have lots of sex, personally. They have no circulation. Well, they're undead, but they can still, walk, so clearly other bodily functions might be whatever you want, metamorphoses. I forget, Quoteth. A vampire's dick or pussy will be cold? Okay, does anyone else feel like that's weird? If a vampire is biologically dead and animate through magic, how can that magic animate them and give them overwhelming physical strength, but not warmth? All the warmth your body generates is because of your cells trying to do the things that allow you to move around. The vampires can move around. Why the energy sufficient to move them should warm them? Magic? No, I know magic, but shouldn't it be emanating? I think they can be warm. And if not, they can just warm themselves up. What? They're vampires. It's not like their skin burns when they touch boiling water. Just put them in a warm bath for a while. Then you're fine. Have them drink hot water. It'll radiate out. Oh, dude. Holy shit. Can you imagine fucking cold vamp pussy and they drink some boiling water? And it doesn't hurt them because they're a fucking vampire. And then the boiling water is in their stomach and the heat radiates out. And you can feel that your dick getting warmer from like tip to base. Holy shit. Wait, hold on. Okay, we're not just talking cold here. We're talking temperature variability. Nah, come on. Come on.
Woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Come on. This is power here. You know, the vamp pussy is maintained at a probably like 140 degrees nonstop. Did I say vamp pussy? No, werewolf pussy. Sorry, werewolf pussy. Would be very warm, I assume. You should get back into writing just for this? Okay. Yeah, the wussy. Werewolves make good subs, though. They're very loyal. I have never seen a depiction of a werewolf that involved them being sexually submissive to anybody, buddy. You might be thinking, like, Dog Girl. Like, with the anime girl with the ears. Maybe them, okay? You know, in the public discourse, I think werewolves are tops. As I understand it, you know. In my extensive experience having sex with fantasy creatures. You meant loyal in a paternalistic sense? What, like you mean they'd fuck you and then like bite you and if anyone else came near you, they'd kill them? Yeah, they have a whole, isn't there a whole like erotic literature genre for this? It's called Omniverse, right? Lindsay Ellis, is it Omegaverse? Omegaverse. Lindsay Ellis did a whole thing about this. Basically the premise is that this is overwhelmingly homosexual literature. And guys can be broken down into 3 types of guys, okay? There are the alphas, the betas, and the omegas. And the alphas are like the gigachads. Betas are like regular people. And the omegas are like bussy factor. Like they're like walking holes, you know? And mpreg is a thing, which is when you get a guy pregnant, but they're a cis guy, you know. I mean, you can also get a trans guy pregnant. I don't think they call that mpreg, but even though it technically is, you know, whatever. Okay. And then they've got things called, it's heat, which is like when you're in heat. Like when they say like the cat's in heat and that's why it's being annoying, you know, like that kind of thing. Stuff like that, you know. Also, sometimes they have the knots on their dicks. Would you say trans women are more into werewolves or vampires? Werewolves. Werewolves. For obvious reasons, werewolves. This is too much. The heat suppressants? Oh yeah, the heat suppressants. So you have an omega guy whose bussy is exuding pheromones from the heat, taking heat suppressants to feign as an alpha. But then the real alpha bumps into them in the hall, and the bussy suppressant, the heat suppressant explodes, and then the pheromones get everywhere, and then the alpha fucks them or something. This is what all the stories are like. I've never read one. I assume that I'm accurate. Am I inaccurate? I think I'm pretty much on the ball with this. Yeah. Yep. Betas are the normal people? I literally said that. That seems weird, Kropotkinkin. Wait, so what's an omega? Omega is the ultimate bussy hole. They're like the M breeder fuck sock. Thoughts on other fuckable mythological creatures? That would be one hell of a stun lock. If I felt like getting into it. We're almost at the end of stream, and somehow it feels like we got nothing done. We should probably go over that Black Hammer thing, shouldn't we? Imagine if you did a magical creature fuck tier list. Yeah, hold on. Greek Monsters. Let me just find one fuckable one. And then hit you all with the hot take, and then we're done, and we're doing the thing. Centaurs? I don't find centaurs attractive. You all really misinterpret my, Okay, hold on. We're just gonna find one. The problem is whether or not they're attractive really seems to depend on who's drawing them. This is very much up for interpretation. I'm looking, though. Well, credit where credit's due. A lot of these interpretations are not very attractive. You know that in the myth, Medusa doesn't actually have a snake body? Literally just like the snake hair? Actually, there are a lot of, there are a lot of Greek monsters that are not that cool. You know? Like apparently the Hydra was like 10 feet tall or something. Satyrs are kind of pog. That's a little big. Yeah, but it's like the Hydra though, right? No, yeah, I know 10 feet tall is scary and all, but it's the Hydra. Like, Hercules slaying the Hydra was one of his fucking 12 labors of Hercules, right? Like, it's Hercules. He became a god. I feel like him killing it should have been bigger. I don't know. Whatever. Get Lamia Greek? I'm seeing a lot of stuff here. Wait, what about... Okay, hold on. Greek, Satyr? Satyrs are fuckable. Satyrs love fucking. Yeah, the satyrs on the urns, these things all have erections, including this horse. Man, I don't know. Are the satyrs all men? Nymph? Am I looking for nymphs? Isn't a nymph just a naked lady? Yeah, I think the nymphs are literally just like regular naked ladies. Like they don't really look like Nalad? That's a food. Oh no, wait, it corrected to salad. Okay, what about Dryad? Man, I don't even know what the fuck I'm looking at. Whatever. Dryads are tree ladies? Yeah, I can see that. Sirens? Sirens are birds, right? Hell yeah. Alright, we found our fuckable creature. This is the original siren, okay? Literally. No harpies and sirens. The original sirens are literally just like birds with human heads. Fuck yeah, absolutely. How do you fuck that? I think I would just like ride in it. I don't know. Because it's so weird looking. Why does it only have one leg? It's just a trick of the light. Aren't they the ones that lead sailors their death? Yeah, imagine being a sailor at sea on a trireme, being lured to the rocks, and your entranced mind sees some like 8-foot tall pigeons with human heads screaming at you, and you're like, beautiful, and you're like fucking sailing over to them. That's good. Yeah, and then you fucking die. Naid? Oh, these are just more spirit ladies. And they're also naked in all these pictures. I don't even know if I can show them. Does it even count as a monster lady if they're like, yeah, dude, it's totally a spirit of the river. Also, it just looks exactly like a hot chick. Okay, I mean, cool, don't get me wrong. I don't really know if it's a monster girl, though. Alright, we're moving on. Stop. Stop immediately. Anyone who continues will be banned. IRL.